The royal hall of Zara had never seen a human before. Its tall pillars of silver stone stretched high above, reflecting the golden light of the twin suns. Rows of alien nobles filled the seats, their eyes sharp, their robes glittering with jewels. Guards with tall spears stood ready, their armor glowing faintly with energy. The atmosphere was tense, for today was not a normal day. At the center of the hall, before the great throne, stood Daniel, a human envoy sent from Earth. He wore a simple black suit with a silver crest on his chest. Unlike the nobles around him, who sparkled with riches, Daniel's appearance was plain. Yet his posture was steady, his eyes calm, and his steps measured. He knew every gaze was judging him. Whispers passed through the hall as the alien nobles studied him. Some tilted their heads in curiosity. Others sneered, thinking him weak. To them, humans were fragile creatures from a distant world, not worthy of standing in the presence of their queen. "Look at him," one noble muttered to another. "So small, so simple. How could such a being represent an entire world?" Daniel heard the whispers but paid them no attention. His mission was clear. He had come as a representative of Earth, chosen not for strength but for wisdom, for patience, and for the ability to speak with dignity even when surrounded by hostility. He reminded himself to stay calm, to breathe, and to keep his focus on the queen. At the far end of the hall, upon a throne carved from crystal, sat Queen Arya of Zara. Her presence was striking. She was taller than Daniel, her form graceful yet powerful. Her silver crown shimmered, and her eyes glowed with a quiet strength. The hall hushed as she slowly rose from her throne. The queen raised her hand, silencing the whispers of the nobles. Her voice carried through the chamber, clear and commanding. "People of Zara," she began, "today we meet an envoy from Earth. This is Daniel, chosen by his world to stand before us. He comes not with weapons, but with words. He comes not to conquer, but to speak. Listen well, for today may change the path of our kingdom." Her words unsettled many of the nobles. Some frowned, shaking their heads. They did not like the idea of treating a human with such honor. But none dared interrupt their queen. Daniel stepped forward, bowing slightly as he had been instructed. His voice was steady, though he felt the weight of every eye upon him. "Your Majesty, noble council, and people of Zara," he said, "I stand here in respect. Earth has sent me not to claim power, but to offer friendship. We are far from one another, yet we share the same stars above. May our meeting today be the start of peace and understanding." The words were simple, yet they carried meaning. A few of the younger nobles softened their expressions, surprised by his tone. Others scoffed quietly, unimpressed. The queen studied Daniel closely. She saw not only the plainness of his suit or the smallness of his frame, but the courage in his stance. He did not tremble before her court. He did not shrink from their stares. He held himself with honor, something she had rarely seen even among her own nobles. The silence stretched, heavy with expectation. The people waited for the queen's response. Would she dismiss him as unworthy, as many hoped? Or would she recognize something different? Then, in a moment that no one could have predicted, Queen Arya stepped down from her throne. Her footsteps echoed across the silver floor as she walked toward Daniel. The nobles leaned forward, curious and anxious. The guards tightened their grip on their weapons, unsure of what was about to happen. Standing before Daniel, the queen looked into his eyes. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then her voice rang out across the hall, clear and unshaken. "I wish you were my husband, human." The The words struck like thunder. Gasps filled the hall. Nobles rose from their seats in shock. Some shouted, others whispered in disbelief. A queen confessing such a thing to a human was beyond imagination. Daniel himself was frozen. He had expected questions, perhaps even insults. He had prepared for long debates and harsh trials. But he had not prepared for this. The queen turned her gaze to her people. Her voice grew stronger as she repeated, "Yes, I wish Daniel, this human, were my husband. For in him, I see something I do not see in this hall. I see humility. I see courage. I see a heart that does not hunger for power but stands firm in truth." The uproar grew louder. Nobles shouted objections. Some cried out that it was dishonor. Others demanded the queen take back her words. But Queen Arya stood tall, unbending, her eyes calm and steady. Daniel could only stand in silence, his thoughts racing. He had not asked for this. He had not dreamed of such words being spoken in this hall of power. And yet, the queen had said them, and the entire kingdom had heard. The first part of his mission was over, but he now stood at the center of a storm greater than anything Earth had warned him about. The path ahead would not be easy. The hall had been shocked, but the story of the human and the queen had only just begun. The words of Queen Arya did not fade quickly. They echoed across the silver walls of the great hall, bouncing in the ears of every noble present. "I wish you were my husband, human." Such a sentence had never been heard in the history of Zara. The nobles rose from their seats, their long robes swishing across the floor as they shouted in disbelief. Some cried out that it was treason against tradition. Others demanded guards to remove Daniel at once. The once majestic hall turned into a storm of voices. Daniel stood at the center of the chaos, still and steady. Inside, his thoughts clashed like waves, but outwardly he remained calm. He had been trained to face pressure with patience. Yet nothing in his training had prepared him for a queen's public confession. The guards looked to one another, uncertain. Their queen had spoken, yet the nobles' anger was fierce. No one dared to make the first move. Queen Arya lifted her hand. Her voice rose above the noise. "Silence." Her command cut through the uproar like a blade. One by one, the nobles quieted, though their faces burned with anger. The hall returned to stillness, every eye fixed on the queen. She turned back to Daniel. Her expression held neither fear nor doubt. "You wonder why I said those words," she said. "It is not madness, nor is it weakness. It is truth. I see in you what this hall has long forgotten." Daniel bowed slightly, his voice respectful. "Your Majesty, I am honored, but I did not come seeking such words. I came only to offer peace between our worlds." Arya nodded. "And it is for that reason I spoke. Peace cannot be built by greed or pride. It must be built by those who value honor above power. You showed me that today." Murmurs spread through the hall again, but quieter this time. Some nobles whispered that the queen was bewitched. Others feared she had lost reason. But among the guards and common attendants, a new feeling stirred. Curiosity. Respect. One noble, Lord Vera, rose with fury. His tall figure cast a long shadow across the floor. "This is an insult to our kingdom. A human cannot be compared to us, let alone spoken of as a husband for our queen. Your words shame our traditions, Arya." The queen's gaze hardened. "Traditions built on corruption are not worth protecting, Lord Vera. You sit on your wealth while the people suffer. You call yourselves guardians of honor, Yet you scheme and fight for power. Tell me, what honor lies in that? The hall fell silent again. Daniel watched closely, realizing this was more than just a personal matter. The Queen's confession had exposed deep cracks in the court. Daniel chose his words carefully. Your Majesty, I do not wish to cause division among your people. If my presence here brings only anger, perhaps I should step away. Arya shook her head. No, Daniel. Your presence reveals the truth. They rage because they fear change. But change is what our kingdom needs. Her voice rose again, strong and steady. People of Zara, today you have seen the courage of a human. He stands before us with no army, no weapon, and yet he does not tremble. He speaks with respect, not arrogance. This is why I said what I said. Because I see in him the spirit of a leader, not a tyrant. The crowd of nobles erupted again. But this time, the sound was mixed. Some shouted with anger, demanding her words be erased. Yet others stayed quiet, uncertain. Among them, Daniel noticed younger nobles watching with thoughtful eyes. Perhaps not all of them were against him. Daniel breathed slowly, steadying himself. He knew his response here mattered. His next words would shape how they all saw him. Your Majesty, he said, his voice firm but humble, I do not know what your future holds, nor mine. I did not expect such words from you. But if my being here brings a chance for your people to see humans in a new light, then I will not turn away from it. I stand ready to prove myself in whatever way is needed. His words struck the hall like a steady drumbeat. He did not boast, he did not cower. He spoke with calm resolve. Queen Arya nodded, a small smile touching her lips. Then so it shall be. She turned to the council. If you doubt his worth, test him. If you think him weak, let him prove his strength. Let the trials of Zara judge him. If he fails, your voices will be heard. But if he succeeds, you will accept what I have spoken. The nobles murmured uneasily. Trials were sacred, ancient tests meant for warriors of their people. To place a human through them seemed foolish. Yet none could openly deny the Queen's challenge. Lord Varys sneered. So be it. Let the human face the trials. He will not last a single test. The Queen's eyes flashed with fire. We shall see. Daniel's heart pounded, but he did not show fear. He had heard of the trials, though only in fragments. Dangerous beasts, impossible puzzles, and duels against skilled warriors. To the nobles, it was certain defeat. But Daniel had faced hopeless odds before, not with strength of body, but with strength of mind. He bowed once more to the Queen. If this is the path, I will walk it. The Queen looked at him, her eyes steady. Then prepare yourself, Daniel of Earth. The trials will begin at dawn. The hall stirred with anticipation. Nobles whispered of humiliation. Guards exchanged uncertain glances. And somewhere in the shadows, hidden smiles appeared among those who longed for change. As Daniel was escorted out of the hall, he felt the weight of the Queen's words still pressing on his shoulders. He had not come to Zara to win a throne or a crown. Yet fate had placed him in the center of a storm. The Queen had confessed before all. The nobles had challenged. And now, the trials awaited. The story of Daniel, the human envoy, was no longer a simple mission of peace. It had become something greater. Something dangerous. Something that would decide not only his future, but the future of an entire kingdom. The news of the Queen's confession spread through the kingdom of Zara like fire across dry fields. From the shining towers of the capital to the smallest villages, people spoke of it. Some were shocked, some laughed, and some whispered that the queen had lost her wisdom. But in every place, the name of Daniel, the human envoy, was on the lips of the people. Inside the royal hall, the nobles were not ready to let the matter rest. They gathered in groups after the queen left, their voices sharp with anger. They called the queen reckless and accused her of insulting their traditions. Some demanded her removal from the throne if she did not take back her words. Lord Vera, tall and proud, stood at the center of the anger. His voice carried power, and many nobles looked to him for guidance. "This cannot stand," he declared. "A human cannot be compared to us. The queen has shamed her ancestors by speaking such words. If we let this continue, our people will lose respect for the crown." Several nobles nodded. Others hesitated, looking uneasy. They did not trust humans, but they also feared the queen's wrath. The hall had grown divided. Meanwhile, Daniel was escorted to his chambers by the guards. The chamber was large, with silver walls and a tall window overlooking the city. He sat by the window, gazing at the twin suns sinking into the horizon. His mind was heavy. He had not asked for this storm. He had only come as an envoy of peace, but now he was at the heart of a struggle far larger than he had expected. He thought of Earth, of his home, and the weight of representing humanity. He knew that every step he took now would reflect on his people. Failure would mean shame, but success could change the way the universe saw humans. As he sat in thought, a soft knock came at the door. A young guard stepped in, his armor still shining from duty. His name was Rin, and though his voice trembled with nerves, his eyes were curious. "Envoy Daniel," Rin said, "forgive me for disturbing you. I wished only to say, you were brave today. No one in this kingdom could have stood as you did before the nobles." Daniel gave a small smile. "Thank you, Rin. But I only did what was needed. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is standing firm even when fear is heavy." The young guard nodded, clearly moved. "Many of us saw it. Many of us respect it, even if the nobles do not." His words gave Daniel a spark of hope. Perhaps not all in this kingdom were against him. That night, the council gathered again without the queen. They argued fiercely, their anger burning brighter. Some called for Daniel to be sent away at once. Others wanted him imprisoned. But Lord Vera rose again with a cunning smile. "No," he said. "Let him stay. Let him face the trials of Zera. We all know no human can survive them. When he fails, the queen's words will collapse with him, and her shame will be plain for all to see." The council agreed. Their plan was cruel, but it gave them what they wanted, proof of Daniel's weakness. The next morning, Daniel was summoned once more to the great hall. The nobles sat in their places, their eyes sharp and cold. The queen sat upon her throne, her face calm though her hands were clenched tight. Lord Vera rose to speak. "Daniel of Earth," he said, his tone heavy with pride, "you have heard our queen's words. But words are wind. If you are to be honored in this kingdom, you must prove yourself through the ancient trials. These trials are sacred. They test strength, wit, and courage. If you succeed, then perhaps the queen's words will be respected. If you fail, you will leave this kingdom in shame." The hall buzzed with approval from the nobles. They believed the matter settled. Daniel stepped forward, his expression calm. "If this is what must be done, then I will face these trials. I do not fear them. I may not be the strongest in body, but I will not step back from a test of will. The queen rose suddenly. Her voice cut across the hall. This is not justice. You know well these trials are deadly. You set him to fail. Lord Varys smiled. If he is truly what you say, your majesty, he will not fail. The queen looked at Daniel, her eyes filled with concern. For a moment, it seemed she might forbid it. But Daniel gave her a small nod. Let it be, your majesty. I came here to represent Earth with honor. If this is the path, I will walk it. The hall stirred with murmurs. The queen studied him closely, then slowly lowered herself back into her throne. She did not like it, but she respected his courage. Very well, she said softly. Let the trials begin. The announcement spread quickly through the city. Crowds gathered in the streets, speaking of the human who would face the sacred tests. Many came with mockery, expecting his failure. Yet some, especially the common folk, were eager to see if he could surprise the nobles. In his chamber that night, Daniel prepared himself. He had no weapons, no knowledge of what the trials would hold. All he had was his mind, his will, and the lessons of his people. He reminded himself of the queen's words, of the respect she had shown him. He would not let her down. As the moons rose high above the city, Daniel lay awake, knowing dawn would bring the first trial. Beyond the walls, the nobles plotted and planned, certain of his defeat. But in the quiet of his heart, Daniel made a promise. No matter what beasts, puzzles, or battles awaited him, he would not bow. He would stand as a human, and he would show them that Earth's strength was not in gold or armies, but in the spirit of its people. The nobles thought they had trapped him. Yet what they had truly done was give him a chance to show the galaxy the worth of humanity. The storm was only growing, and Daniel was ready to face it. The dawn rose over Zero with golden light, casting long shadows across the great city. The bells of the palace rang, calling nobles, guards, and citizens to gather. The first trial of the human was about to begin. The air was filled with excitement and tension. Many came to laugh at his failure. Others came with curiosity, wondering if the queen's bold words would hold meaning. Daniel walked through the wide palace gates escorted by guards. His steps were calm though his heart beat heavy in his chest. He wore no armor, only a simple tunic given to him the night before. Around him, the people shouted and whispered. Some called him weak. Others cheered softly, almost secretly, hoping he might surprise the nobles. The queen watched from a high balcony, her eyes sharp and steady. Though she said nothing, her thoughts were restless. She knew the trials were dangerous. She knew the nobles wanted Daniel to fall. But she also knew there was something in him that set him apart from all others. The first trial was held in the arena of beasts. It was a vast stone circle carved deep into the earth, its walls towering high. The ground was rough and scarred from many battles fought there. At the center, Daniel stood alone, surrounded by the roars of the crowd. Lord Varys stepped forward, his voice booming. Behold, the human who would stand among us. Today he faces the trial of the beast. If he survives, he may move forward. If he fails, let all know he was never worthy of our queen's words. The gates at the far end of the arena rumbled open. A deep growl echoed from the darkness. Out stepped a creature unlike anything Daniel had seen on earth. It was a massive beast, four-legged, with black scales shining like metal. Its jaws were wide with sharp teeth, and its eyes burned with red fire. The crowd roared with excitement. Daniel's heart raced, but he forced himself to remain steady. He had no sword, no shield. All he had was a wooden staff given to him as a token. To the nobles, it was only a symbol of hopelessness. But to Daniel, it was something he could use with skill. The beast lowered its head and charged. The ground shook under its weight. Daniel moved quickly, dodging to the side. Dust rose as the creature slammed into the stone where he had stood. The crowd cheered wildly, expecting the beast to end it soon. Daniel circled, watching closely. He knew he could not fight the beast with strength. Its power was far beyond his. But he could use his speed, his mind, and the staff. As the beast turned, Daniel jabbed the staff at its eye. The creature roared in pain, stumbling back. The crowd gasped. He kept moving, never staying in one place for long. The beast chased him, snapping its jaws, but Daniel stayed just ahead. He struck again at its legs, forcing it to stumble. Every strike was small, but it slowed the monster bit by bit. The nobles muttered in surprise. None had expected the human to last more than moments. Now he was forcing the beast to fight harder. From the balcony, Queen Arya leaned forward, her eyes shining with pride. She saw not a weak envoy, but a man who fought with courage and cunning. The beast roared again and swung its massive tail. Daniel was thrown to the ground, the breath knocked from his chest. Pain surged through him, but he forced himself to rise. The crowd cheered the beast, believing the end was near. But Daniel did not yield. He steadied himself and waited. The beast charged once more. At the last moment, Daniel planted his staff into the ground and vaulted over its head. The crowd gasped as he landed behind it. With all his strength, he drove the staff into the beast's wounded eye. The monster shrieked and collapsed, thrashing wildly before finally falling still. Dust filled the arena. Silence hung heavy over the crowd. Then, slowly, the cheers began. First from the common folk, then from the guards, and finally even from a few young nobles. Daniel stood, breathing hard, his body aching but his spirit unbroken. He had faced the beast and lived. Lord Vera's face twisted in anger. He had expected Daniel's death, not his victory. But he could not deny what all had seen. The human had passed the first trial. The queen rose to her feet, her voice clear. You have witnessed it? Daniel of Earth has faced the trial of the beast and triumphed. Let this be the first proof that worth is not measured by blood or tradition, but by courage and will. The crowd roared in approval. The name of Daniel spread even wider through the city that day. He was no longer just a stranger. He was the human who defeated the beast. As Daniel left the arena, he felt the weight of eyes upon him. Some were filled with hatred, others with respect. He knew the trials were far from over. The next tests would be even harder. But he also knew something had changed. The people had seen him survive. They had seen him stand against the impossible. And with each step forward, the queen's bold words gained more power. That night, Daniel sat again by the window of his chamber. His body was bruised, his muscles sore, but his spirit was strong. Rin, the young guard, came to him once more. You did it, Rin said with awe. No one thought you could, but you did. The people are speaking of you with respect. Some even say you fight with the heart of Zera itself. Daniel smiled faintly. It was not strength that won today. It was patience, timing, and will. That is what humans carry with them. That is what I wished to show. Rin nodded, his respect for Daniel growing stronger. As the moons rose above the city, the queen stood on her balcony, looking out at the stars. She thought of her words, of the storm they had caused, and of the man who now carried the burden of them. For the first time in many years, she felt hope stirring in her heart. The trials were not yet done. More dangers awaited. But Daniel had taken the first step, and in that step, he had begun to change the kingdom. The city of Zara was alive with whispers. From the market streets to the high towers of the nobles, everyone spoke of the human who had faced the trial of the beast and lived. Many still doubted him, saying luck had carried him through. Others, especially the common folk, began to admire him. To them, he was proof that courage could defeat power. Daniel walked through the palace gardens the morning after his victory. The air was cool, and the flowers glowed with strange colors under the twin suns. His body still ached from the battle, but his steps were steady. Wherever he went, guards and servants gave him glances filled with curiosity. Some even gave small nods of respect. Queen Arya joined him in the gardens. She wore a silver robe that flowed with the wind, her crown resting lightly upon her head. Her eyes were calm, yet behind them lay unspoken thoughts. "You fought bravely," she said. "But more than bravery, you fought with wisdom. That is what the nobles fear most. They know strength, but they do not understand restraint. You showed both." Daniel bowed his head slightly. "I fought as I could. I am not the strongest, but I know that patience and thought can turn even the largest storm." The queen looked at him closely. "You speak like a leader, Daniel. That is why I said what I said in the hall. My people do not need more swords. They need hearts that think beyond pride." Daniel met her gaze but said nothing. He understood her meaning, but he also knew her words had placed him in danger. Later that day, the second trial was announced. Unlike the first, it was not of strength but of wit. Daniel was taken to the Hall of Puzzles, a vast chamber filled with ancient stones, shifting walls, and glowing symbols. The nobles gathered again, eager to see him fail. The challenge was simple in words but cruel in truth. He had to find his way through the labyrinth and unlock the crystal at its heart. The paths shifted, the doors closed behind him, and riddles written in glowing letters blocked his way. Daniel moved slowly, studying the symbols, tracing the shapes with his hands. He remembered lessons from Earth, logic puzzles, and languages. Piece by piece, he solved the riddles, finding patterns the nobles thought a human could never see. Hours passed. The crowd outside grew restless. Many laughed, saying he was lost forever. But when the final gate opened and Daniel stepped out carrying the glowing crystal, the arena erupted in gasps. He had passed again. The people cheered, louder this time. The nobles whispered among themselves, anger and worry mixing in their voices. Lord Veyra clenched his fists, his jaw tight. He had planned for Daniel to fail quickly, but now the human had passed 2 trials. That evening, the city streets buzzed with talk of him. Children shouted his name in games, pretending to fight beasts with sticks. Merchants spoke of his patience and cleverness. Soldiers whispered that he carried the spirit of Zara itself. In the palace, Queen Arya met Daniel again. She had watched his struggle in the labyrinth, watched his calm as he faced each puzzle. "You do not fight only with body," she said softly. "You fight with mind. That is why the people are beginning to believe." Daniel looked at her carefully. "Do they believe in me, or do they believe in the idea that things can change?" The queen smiled faintly. "Perhaps both. But either way, the fire has started." Their conversations grew longer with each passing day. Arya spoke of the burdens of rule, of nobles who cared only for their own power, of a people who longed for justice but were bound by fear. Daniel listened, offering thoughts drawn from his own world. He did not tell her what to do, but his words carried perspective she had never heard before. "You think differently," she said once. "You see beyond the walls of this palace. That is why your presence shakes them so deeply." Daniel shook his head. "I only speak what I know. On earth, we have our own struggles. We are not perfect. But we have learned that courage is not only in battle. It is in kindness, in fairness, in the will to stand when it is easier to fall." The queen's eyes softened. In her heart, she began to feel something she had not felt in years. Respect that turned into trust. Trust that slowly grew into something deeper. But beyond the palace walls, danger stirred. The nobles grew restless. They met in secret chambers, their voices sharp with anger. "If this continues, the people will turn against us," one noble hissed. "Already the markets cheer his name." Lord Varys slammed his hand on the table. "Then we must act before he wins the third trial. If he passes again, the Queen's words will gain power we cannot stop." They plotted in the shadows, their envy turning into hatred. Plans were whispered, knives sharpened, and threats prepared. Back in the palace, Daniel did not know of these plots, but he sensed the danger in every glance from the nobles. Still, he walked without fear. He had not come to bow. He had come to stand. That night, Ren visited him again. The young guard carried excitement in his voice. "Daniel, the people in the lower city speak of you with pride. They say you are like them, a man who fights not for gold but for truth. They see you as one of their own." Daniel smiled faintly. "If they see me as one of them, then perhaps there is hope. Because true strength is not in crowns or jewels, but in the hearts of those who stand together." As the moons rose over Zara, Queen Arya stood at her window, watching the stars. She thought of the path ahead, of the storms waiting, and of the man who now carried her kingdom's fragile hope. Her confession had shocked the hall, but now it began to grow into something more. With every trial, with every word, Daniel was not only defending himself. He was showing her people that humanity carried a spirit strong enough to stand beside them. And though she did not yet say it aloud, she knew in her heart that her confession had not been a mistake. It had been the beginning. The calm that had settled over Zara after Daniel's victories did not last. The nobles who opposed him gathered in secret, their anger burning brighter with every word spoken by the people. They could not bear to see a human, a stranger from another world, gain respect and admiration. Their plans were dangerous, but they believed desperation justified the risk. Lord Varys, still furious from Daniel's victories, paced in the shadowed hall of the palace. "We cannot wait any longer," he said. "The people cheer his name, and the Queen's support for him grows daily. If we do not act, he will rise above us all." Other nobles nodded, their faces pale with worry but filled with determination. "What do you propose?" asked one, his voice low. "We strike tonight," Varys said, his eyes sharp. "Send the assassins to his chambers. Remove him before dawn. If he dies, the Queen will have no choice but to silence him. The kingdom will follow tradition again." The group agreed. The plan was set. Under the cover of night, the assassins would move silently through the palace, their mission precise and deadly. Meanwhile, Daniel had no knowledge of the plot. He spent the evening preparing for the next trial. The third challenge would test endurance and courage, but first, he needed rest. In his chamber, he looked out over the city, the lights flickering beneath the twin moons. Rin, the young guard, knocked gently on the door and entered. "They are speaking of you in every street, Daniel," Rin said. "People say your courage has given them hope. I do not know how the nobles will react, but you are inspiring many." Daniel smiled faintly. "If my actions give them hope, then it is more than I could ask for. But courage must always be measured against caution. I feel the winds shifting, Rin. Danger is near." Rin nodded, concern in his eyes. "I will stand by you, Daniel. No harm will come while I am here." The night deepened, and the palace grew silent. Unseen in the shadows, the assassins crept through corridors, moving like ghosts toward Daniel's chamber. Their steps were careful, their blades sharp. They had trained for months, waiting for this moment. Suddenly, the door to Daniel's chamber burst open. Two figures lunged forward. But before they could reach him, a flash of silver and a movement faster than thought sent them sprawling. Ren stood in the doorway, his sword in hand, protecting the human envoy. Daniel grabbed a small blade from the side of the table, his mind clear and focused. He did not fight with anger but with precision. Every movement was deliberate. The first assassin swung, but Daniel sidestepped and struck with his blade. The second rushed him, but Ren intercepted, parrying the blow with skillful timing. The battle was fast and silent, a deadly dance of speed and strategy. Daniel's training from Earth and his instincts guided him. He did not panic. He did not hesitate. He moved with clarity, striking only when necessary, defending with careful precision. In a few tense minutes, the assassins lay unconscious or fleeing through the halls. Daniel stood, catching his breath, his heart steady despite the danger. He turned to Ren. "We are not done," he said. "This was only the beginning. The nobles are desperate, and desperate men are dangerous." Ren nodded, eyes wide with respect. "We must warn the queen. She will need to know what is happening." They moved quickly through the palace, reaching the balcony where Queen Arya stood, looking out at the moonlit city. When she saw Daniel and Ren approach, her eyes widened with alarm. "What happened?" she asked, her voice tense. "They tried to kill me," Daniel said calmly. "Assassins from your own nobles. They cannot accept what has happened. They fear change, and now they act." The queen's hand went to her chest, her face pale. "I should have seen this coming. But they will not harm you here. Guards will stand with us." Daniel shook his head. "This is bigger than the palace. The nobles will strike if we are not ready. We must show them courage, and the people must see that treachery will fail." Word of the attempted assassination spread quickly. Citizens gathered near the palace, unsure of what to believe. Some were frightened, others furious. The queen called for a public announcement. Standing before her balcony, she addressed the city. "People of Zara," she said, her voice strong and unwavering, "there are those among my council who wish to harm one who stands for justice and courage. This cannot be allowed. Daniel, the human, has faced our trials with honor and strength. He represents the values we should all cherish. Those who act in treachery will face justice." The crowd responded with cheers. The streets filled with voices calling for fairness, for courage, for the human envoy who had faced the impossible. Meanwhile, the rebellious nobles realized that their plan had failed. Their attempt to eliminate Daniel had not only failed but had strengthened his position. The people now saw him as a hero, not a stranger. The queen's words, once shocking, now carried weight. Lord Vera's anger burned hotter than ever. "This is not over," he hissed to his allies. "If we cannot kill him, we will find another way. He has entered our world, and he will not leave it unchanged. We must act before it is too late." That night, Daniel stood in the garden with Queen Arya. She looked at him, her expression a mix of worry and admiration. "You survived," she said quietly. "More than that, you have shown the people what courage truly is. And yet, the nobles grow more dangerous. This rebellion will not end easily." Daniel nodded. "I expected danger. But I will not bow to fear. They can try, and they can fight, but their hatred will not stop me. Not while I stand with honor, and not while the people believe in what is right." The queen's eyes softened. For the first time, she felt a quiet relief. He was not only strong, but wise. His presence gave hope not only to her but to the kingdom. As the moons shone over Zara, the palace was alive with tension and purpose. Guards patrolled, citizens whispered, and the nobles planned in secret. Yet in the heart of it all, Daniel stood ready, not as a visitor, not as a stranger, but as a man who had proven that courage, wisdom, and honor could change a kingdom. The rebellion had begun, but Daniel would face it with the same calm, steady courage that had carried him through every trial. The city of Zara awoke to a golden sunrise. The streets were alive with whispers and excitement. People spoke of the events of the previous night, the assassination attempt, the courage of Daniel, and the queen's brave declaration. The nobles who had plotted in secret were in retreat, their power shaken by the people's support for the human envoy. In the grand hall of the palace, the queen prepared for the final gathering. Today would be the day that decided not only Daniel's fate but also the future of the kingdom. The nobles, still bitter and angry, took their seats, though many of them avoided meeting his eyes. Citizens and guards filled the hall, their presence a silent but powerful statement of support. Daniel entered, his posture calm and composed. The trials, the dangers, and the assassination attempt had tested him in every way, yet he stood strong. His eyes scanned the hall, not with pride, but with determination. He understood the responsibility that had been placed upon him. This was no longer about a mission for Earth, it was about justice, courage, and hope for an entire kingdom. Queen Arya rose from her throne. Her silver robes glowed in the morning light, and her crown reflected the twin suns. The nobles straightened, though their expressions were wary. The queen's voice echoed clearly across the hall. "Today, we witness the conclusion of a journey that has tested courage, wisdom, and honor," she began. "Daniel of Earth came to our kingdom as a stranger. He faced trials that many of our strongest warriors could not endure. He has done so with respect, skill, and determination." The crowd listened in silence, the tension thick. The nobles' faces grew tighter, their anger struggling against the quiet acknowledgement of Daniel's achievements. "He has not only survived," the queen continued, "he has earned the respect of the people. He has shown that true strength is measured not in power, but in courage, fairness, and the will to stand for what is right." Murmurs of agreement passed through the hall. Even the guards, who had always been loyal to the queen, nodded silently. Some younger nobles, inspired by Daniel's actions, looked at him with new understanding. Queen Arya paused, her eyes finding Daniel's. She took a deep breath, steadying her voice. "And now, I will speak again, as I did before, for all to hear. Daniel, I wish you to stand not only as a hero of this kingdom but as my chosen partner. Will you accept this responsibility, to stand beside me, to guide and protect Zara together?" The hall went silent. Nobles gasped. Citizens held their breath. The queen's words carried weight, and Daniel's answer would decide the future of the kingdom. Daniel bowed his head slightly, his voice calm and steady. Your Majesty, I came to your world to offer peace and respect. I did not come seeking honor or title. But I see now the trust you and your people have placed in me. If it is your wish, I will stand with you not as a conqueror, not as a stranger, but as a man committed to honor and justice. A cheer rose from the crowd. The citizens shouted his name, waving their hands and banners. Even some nobles, though reluctant, could not deny the respect and admiration in the hall. The queen smiled, a light shining in her eyes. Then it is done. Together, we will lead Zara into a future of courage, fairness, and strength. Not as ruler and subject, but as partners in the service of our people. Daniel stepped forward, bowing respectfully to the queen before rising to stand beside her. He felt the weight of the hall's gaze, but he also felt the support of every heart that had believed in him. He had earned this not through force, but through every choice he had made, every trial he had faced, and every act of courage and wisdom. The nobles who had opposed him were forced to accept the reality. The rebellion had failed. Their plots had only strengthened Daniel's position and highlighted their own weakness. Some bowed reluctantly, recognizing that their kingdom had chosen a new path. Others left in silence, unwilling to witness the change. The citizens erupted in celebration. From the streets to the highest towers, people shouted, danced, and sang. They honored Daniel not only for his victories but for the hope he had inspired. They had seen a human face courage, wisdom, and fairness, and in doing so, they had seen a future that was brighter than any before. That evening, as the moons rose over Zara, Queen Arya and Daniel walked together in the palace gardens. The flowers glowed softly under the moonlight, and the city sparkled below them. You have changed this kingdom, Daniel, the queen said softly. Not with power, not with force, but with your heart. I have seen many rulers, many warriors, but none like you. Daniel looked at her with quiet respect. It is not my heart alone. Your trust, and the people's courage, allowed this to happen. We have done this together. The queen nodded. Yes, together. And now, our work continues. There will be challenges, but we will face them side by side. Zara will not return to fear or pride. We will lead with courage, justice, and honor. Daniel smiled. Then let us begin. In the days that followed, Daniel and Queen Arya worked together to rebuild trust between the people and the nobles, to strengthen the kingdom, and to ensure fairness for all. The legend of the human who faced impossible trials spread across the lands, inspiring other kingdoms and species to see the worth of courage and wisdom over power and fear. And in the great hall, the place where the queen's shocking confession had first been spoken, Daniel stood beside Arya. The nobles no longer whispered against him. The people no longer doubted. Together, they had proven that true strength is not in titles or bloodlines, but in courage, honor, and the will to stand for what is right. The queen looked at Daniel once more, her voice soft but full of warmth. You came from another world, yet you have become part of ours. I am glad you stayed. Daniel bowed his head respectfully. And I am honored to stand with you, for the people of Zara and for the hope we share. Under the twin moons, the kingdom celebrated. The human envoy had become more than a stranger. He had become a hero, a partner, and a symbol of courage. And the queen's words, once shocking, had proven true. Zara would never forget the human who had shown them the strength of honor, courage, and the heart. The kingdom had changed forever, and humanity had earned a place among the stars.